Good evening, I'm Jake Zippin. For many, there's only one relevant piece of information from today's NCAA sanctions on Oregon. No bowl ban for the Ducks. It was no doubt a slap on the wrist, but slaps can hurt, especially if you hit hard enough. The Ducks are put on 3 years of probation, lose 1 scholarship per year for 3 seasons, and face some restrictions in how they can recruit. Chip Kelly also hit with penalties, which don't matter much because he's not a college coach anymore. A representative for the committee that doled out the punishment, not surprisingly, does not think this is a slap on the wrist.
I've not met an institution that wants to go through the infractions and enforcement process. This was a multi-year effort that certainly existed, and there are penalties that do impact the program. The committee made its decisions based on the information presented to it, not on other speculation and evaluations.
Here is a list of the specific sanctions the Ducks face and what they mean. First, probation for 3 years. That means that if Oregon breaks any rules in the next 3 years, penalties will be severe. The Ducks will lose 1 scholarship per year for 3 seasons. Instead of having 85 scholarship players on the roster, they'll only be able to have 84. Also, their next 2 signing classes can contain a maximum of 24 players, not 25. Oregon will only be able to pay for 37 visits to Eugene by recruits every year for the next 3. That's a reduction from the normal 56. The Ducks will also have fewer days that they can evaluate potential recruits and will not be able to use recruiting services for the next 3 years. Also, they can't associate with Will Lyles anymore. Bummer. Finally, Chip Kelly was hit with a show cause order for the next 18 months. We will get to what that means a bit later. Current players and coaches not available to the media today. Oregon Athletic Director Rob Mullins was. Eric Elkin was at his press conference and joins us live from Autzen Stadium right now. Eric, how did Mullins react to the sanctions?
Jake, I think it would be easy to assume relief would be the emotion given the relatively light sanctions you just laid out there. But that wasn't the case for Rob Mullins. Instead, it was confidence and satisfaction.
Been aware of the facts for a long time. So again, I thought they followed the facts. And you know, it's what we thought it should be all along. And as, for those of you that read the summary disposition, you know, it's substantially consistent with what we expected and self-imposed in that process.
Mullins did admit that after Oregon's summary disposition failed back in December, he was worried about a possible bowl ban. Today, any of those worries that remained are now gone, and the sanctions are rather minimal. But Mullins did say that doesn't mean the Ducks won't feel the effect.
The penalties are in place to impact the program, and they will impact. I mean, you know, it's a very competitive environment for elite-level student athletes in a number of sports, including football. So anytime you lose the opportunity to have people visit your campus, particularly given what we have to showcase when people visit here, and you'll have an impact.
Now, Mullins was the only person made available to the media by the University of Oregon today. No Mark Helfrich, no players. But Mullins did say he spoke with Helfrich this morning, had a conversation with him, and it was mostly about where they go from here. As for the players, most of them, a lot of them, I should say, took to Twitter about their take on the sanctions that were handed down. Defensive tackle Eric Armstead saying, quote, "Chip told me the sanctions wasn't going to be that bad on my home visit. I was never worried." Offensive lineman Tyler Johnstone kept it simple with, "Told you all we would be all right." And wide receiver Josh Huff said, quote, "Ducks ain't worried about none." I assume none means Ducks aren't worried about anything. But, Jake, it's safe to say I think that a lot of the fans, the players, everyone is pretty satisfied with the sanctions that came down today.
Yeah, certainly, Eric. A very understandable reaction. And you mentioned the players, Mullins, Helfrich. How about Chip Kelly? He released a statement to the media, but did he talk to his former boss, Rob Mullins, today?
Rob Mullins did address that during the press conference today. He said that he got a phone call from Chip Kelly this morning, Chip expressing that he was sorry that the university and that Rob Mullins and everyone involved that had to go through this, and also saying that he was just relieved that this process is over. Obviously, Chip is off and happy in his current situation, I have to imagine, with the Philadelphia Eagles, but certainly a sense of relief that this is off, the weight is off everyone's shoulders, and of course that the Ducks don't face any bowl ban.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric. Chip Kelly personally was penalized, as I mentioned earlier, along with former Assistant Director of Operations Josh Gibson. Kelly was given an 18-month show cause order by the NCAA, Gibson a 12-month show cause order. What that means is that if any college wants to hire either Kelly or Gibson, they're going to have to convince the NCAA to let them do so. Essentially, those two unemployable for those time periods in college, but they're both with the Philadelphia Eagles now, so really not much effect here. Kelly released a statement today, quote, "Now that the NCAA has concluded their investigation and penalized the University of Oregon and its football program, I want to apologize to the University of Oregon, all of its current and former players and their fans. I accept my share of responsibility for the actions that led to the penalties. As I have stated before, the NCAA investigation and subsequent ruling had no impact on my decision to leave Oregon for Philadelphia. I have also maintained throughout that I had every intention to cooperate with the NCAA's investigation, which I did. I do expect the University of Oregon and its football program to continue to thrive at a high level. They are a talented and resilient group of coaches and players, and I'm sure they will attempt to put today's news behind them very quickly and move forward as they prepare for the 2013 season." End quote. That is the statement from former Oregon head coach Chip Kelly. KEZI 9 News sports reporter Steven Nelson talked with our college football game day analyst, longtime Division I coach Jay Shockey, about what the actual effect of these sanctions will be.
We're here with our college football game day analyst, Jay Shockey. And Jay, when you look at the NCAA sanctions on Oregon from the perspective of a longtime Division I football coach, where do they hurt the most, if at all?
I think probably the number of scholarships, if that is a disadvantage, that could be, one player can make a difference. But in the big scheme of things, going from 25 to 24 for 3 years and going from 85 to 84 total for those 3 years is really not a big deal.
When you look at it from a recruiting perspective, is one scholarship, does that matter?
Sure, because that could be your great player, right? But it doesn't really. I think it's really a slap on the wrist. One scholarship is just like somebody getting hurt. Next guy in, they talk about at Oregon all the time. So I don't see this as any kind of a competitive disadvantage for Oregon.
Jay, you know as well as anybody, it all comes down to wins and losses. Will the on-field product for the Ducks be hurt by these NCAA sanctions at all?
I don't think so. The Oregon was put on probation in 2004, and it didn't seem to slow them down at all to this point. And now you're looking at a 3-year probation. They do not have a bowl ban, so they can still go to a bowl game. They can still play in the Pac-12 championship game if they qualify for that. So competitively, I don't see a sanction in this group of sanctions that's going to affect them. It shouldn't slow them down at all.
Jay Shockey, thanks for the time and the knowledge.
You're welcome.
For Jay, I'm Steven Nelson. Back to you.
Thank you, Steven and Jay. Finally, the man who this whole thing was centered around, Will Lyles, spoke to Yahoo Sports today, providing a brief statement. Quote, "I agree with the NCAA's penalties against Oregon because the wrong people, namely the players, won't suffer." A sentiment that I think a lot of people can agree with from Will Lyles. Different from past NCAA cases where players who weren't involved with the sanctions ended up getting the punishment and getting hammered for it. USC, Penn State, Ohio State. Not the case here. The Ducks are really in the clear, except for some recruiting disadvantages they'll face over the next few years.
And that's the big thing here. This long-awaited decision, finally.
It's over. Sense of relief, I think, for everybody involved. Fans, certainly the athletic department, and even us in the media.
Yes,
it's been a long time coming. Glad today it finally is here.
It's time for some rest now, Jake. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.